Thank you for joining us again today for another Fluid webinar series event. Very excited again today to have fantastic guests. And quickly, we will be discussing back to the future of advertising, the role of traditional advertising in today's increasingly digital world. I think what we want to show you is just a brief history of, where has traditional advertising gone and where is it today? I really don't think people understand it quite as well as they think they do. And so having a little bit of the background can really help us make the right decisions when deciding to put budget towards traditional methods. And so we will cross lines a little bit between the traditional and digital just because traditional is going that way itself. So you'll see how it really has adapted to the new world. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Dustin. Okay, hold it on a minute.
So, quickly, my name as usual is Dustin Cederholm. I'm the Digital Marketing Director for Fluid, and today I'm really excited to introduce Steve Fowles.
Thank you.
Steve Fowles is an account exec for Comcast and a true expert in not only television but radio and traditional marketing in general, and so he is a wealth of knowledge, and I just wanted to give him a brief moment to introduce yourself and give us a short background of where you've come from.
Well, thank you, Dustin. It's a real pleasure to be here, and this is my first webinar, so I'm a little nervous. I've been selling advertising in the form of radio or television commercials for 34 years now. I started up in Logan, a little radio station up there, and came down to Salt Lake City, worked at Cat Country, which was the #1 radio station in the early 90s, and then decided to go into TV. Started at a startup, KUWB. The only program that we really had on there that anybody would remember was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then and then we aired Jerry Springer in syndication. I'm very proud of that. Then I went on to become the research director at Channel 4, ABC4, and then when they bought WB or CW, by then I became the local sales manager in broadcast television at Channel 4. And then 9 years ago, I decided to go into cable advertising, and I've been doing that for the last 9 years.
Awesome, that's fantastic. And as we go through this presentation, you guys are going to see that Steve has not only been in marketing longer than I've been alive, and but he's truly just a wealth of information. And so I will do my best to make sure that we stay on task and stay within time. But if there's anything you guys want to know afterwards, please feel free to send us your questions. As usual, you can find us on Twitter live streaming this event, and you can find us on the hashtag @FluidWebinarSeries. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at GetFluid, and you can also reach us at Comcast. We would also like to mention that you can reach Steve directly as Comcast is so large, and we want to give you that information. I'm not sure what happened to our slide there. I know we updated that, but it's steve.fowles, so Stephen _Fowles, F-O-W-L-E-S, at cable.comcast.com. And so if you need to reach him, you can go ahead and do so, or if you want to reach Steve as well, just through us, you can always reach out to Fluid, and we'll get everybody in touch together. We'll also follow up with that at the end one more time. So without further ado, we'll jump into it, and we just want to talk about what and why of traditional marketing. So why should you do traditional advertising? I mean, it just seems to have such a, people are seemingly very weary of traditional. It seemed to have gotten kind of a bad reputation, and I don't really think that it deserves it, obviously. Steve, what are some of your thoughts?
Well, the internet became this new, shiny, bright toy that everyone was drawn to, and the biggest thing, honestly, is the ability to measure. One of the things about traditional advertising is it really working? That was the question that I was always being asked. And can you guarantee results? And some of the problem is people do think of the Super Bowl, and they hear these $1 million commercials in the Super Bowl, and so they obviously think that television advertising is too expensive.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the very common things. But at the same time, you do see people putting millions of dollars behind traditional advertising still. And for the most part, these are major brands who know how to discover ROI and obviously see the value of it. And so I think in a way, they are kind of proof that this is still a channel that you want to be exploring. And I think Steve and I are going to talk about how it can be done for both big brands and little brands, and how with some of the localization that's happening, segmentation, fragmentation, it's getting that much better for you to be able to target the zones that you really care most about and where your customers may truly be.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to give this slide over to you, Steve. I think you could do a lot better job than I, but a brief history of marketing itself.
Well, I'm not going to get back into the newspaper that far back, but in radio started in the 1920s, and it was started by companies who were building radios. They owned the radio stations, and the whole sole purpose of radio broadcasting and stations was to sell more radios. That was the first revenue stream. And then they discovered advertising, and it became sponsorships. This hour brought to you by Phillips Petroleum or Brill Cream or whatever. But that's how it first started. And then it became more mainstream as they sold 30-second and 15-second commercials. FM radio started a lot earlier than most people think it did. It didn't really become available in your cars until later. In fact, when I worked in Logan in 1983, I had a customer told me that nobody had FM radios in their cars, which I stood at his doorstep one Saturday morning, asked every one of his customers for 3 hours, and all but 2 people had FM radios. So the misperception, the transistor changed everything with radio. It made it mobile. In the 1960s, Sony's came out with a small radio, and it became a truly mobile. You could take the music anywhere with you. Radio personalities became personal, local, and fan-based. TV started a lot earlier than we think, but the first commercial TVs were in the late 40s. A lot of it was in Great Britain, had more stations than the United States at first. The big thing for TV was when in 1962, the first satellite that came up, and we got the first live broadcast from across the Atlantic Ocean, a live broadcast. And after that was the advent of satellite. Then TV became the source of news and of obviously of entertainment, as we saw the explosion of content. But it was simple. There was only 3 at the first. I remember when ABC, I was alive when ABC first became available in the market that I lived in. There was 4 television stations, and that was it. And so it was simple.
Jump me in here to the internet then.
The internet. That has changed tremendously. I still remember the docile tones of dial-up. I don't know if anyone.
I think most of us do that.
And the thing that really made a big difference was the technology of compression, the technology of getting more speed through a coaxial cable, which none of us thought was ever going to be possible. We thought everyone was going to have fiber to their house to be able to ever see pictures on the internet. If you remember the first websites and things, how long it took to download just a regular picture. Well, that has all changed, as you can see, with companies offering in excess of 100 megabytes, and streaming is almost instantaneous. And both music and video content is all now purchased mostly through streaming, and that has changed that whole model.
And just before I jump off of this, do you tell me what made it possible for Comcast to come to be?
Well, it started in a little place in Tupelo, Mississippi, with an antenna. The little town there could not get the signal from the major city, so they built a tower and they attached the cables and ran them to people's homes. Started very small, and obviously with the technology, it just grew and grew and grew. They acquired more markets, and one of the biggest things was when in a market, say Los Angeles, there may have been 5 or 6 different cable companies providing cable services, and Comcast pioneered the concept of interconnect, where all the cable companies would come together, would offer one product with all of them together, and there would be one sales team selling all these homes from different cable companies. We call that the interconnect. Here in Utah, Comcast only has systems from Logan, Cache Valley to southern Utah County. All the other places in Utah that we have the ability to insert television commercials are other cable companies like Charter, used to be Baja down in St. George, and in Vernal and Price, in Rock Springs, Wyoming, and places like that. We use an interconnect again, and we pay them a small percentage of everything we sell. So they, these small cable companies also can make money on advertising without having the expense of a sales team.
That's awesome. And you know, one thing when I look at this slide that's interesting is it really is print and then radio and TV and how long they've lasted. And you get to the end of this slide to see the social media and some of these things that may or may not last. And so I'd really be interested to see this as it develops, if the original things don't last while some of the things that we've gotten so excited actually go by the wayside. And I think you see that. So I think traditional is a stalwart of marketing and will continue to adapt so that it will be relevant. Just to do a quick comparison, we wanted to show you some of the top 5 traditionals just so everybody has a good concept of when we say traditional marketing, what we're talking about. And so that's your traditionals, your television, cable providers, radio, news and editorial, billboard, and direct mail. Those are the main ones, and there's obviously many, many others. That's not comprehensive, but that's kind of when you say the word what people come to mind with. And then on the flip side, when you start talking digital marketing, most people associate that with email, social media, mobile marketing, PPC, SEO, things of that nature. And again, not comprehensive in any way, but it's kind of just to get your head around what is the difference between a traditional and a digital marketing channel. And so I'm going to have Steve here give us a deep look into the top 5 traditional marketing channels with your expertise, and we'll quickly hand it over. Tell us a little bit about Salt Lake Radio.
Well, Salt Lake Radio is a phenomenon that is unparalleled in any radio market in the United States. We have more commercial radio stations than any market, including Chicago and LA, because we have less religious programming, and we have less diverse programming. But as far as commercial radio stations, there are many, and it's because the technology allowed a signal that was owned in Brigham City. Every little town had their radio, local radio. They were able to move their towers to be able to reach the whole Wasatch Front. And Reagan in 1980 deregulated radio, making them much more valuable as people started buying up and having groups. You can own as many as 6 radio stations in the Salt Lake market. So radio was the original disruptor. Record sales were huge because that was the only way people could get music. Now it was free on radio. And they had a really hard time figuring out how to monetize after they sold the radios, which led to the advertising. And that was the beginning of sponsorship, advertising, and the 30-second commercial.
That's an interesting thing. That's a fascinating, I guess, stat there. when you think about how MP3s have ruined the CD sales, I always hear people talking about when there's something, a new product comes in and how it's going to ruin the old industry, and yet time and time again we see industry adapt. Right. Rather than actually fold. I mean, obviously we have had situations where it has gone by the wayside, but people are still, you know, finding ways for artists to make money, and it's obviously getting harder, but for me seeing this, it apparently got hard 40 years before it, you know, came to the MP3 issue. And so it's just funny how we're always so in the moment of, oh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And yet, historically, if we just knew a little better, we would understand this isn't the first time they've had to adapt and come through a problem.
Well, and you know, these people who are producing the music weren't getting paid either. And so so where ASCAP came in, and that's where all these companies, these streaming video companies, are paying fees to the musicians and the writers, be it they don't think it's enough. One of the big things about radio is that it started the tradition of families gathering around the entertainment.
Oh, sure.
You know, during the Depression and during World War II, everyone sat around the radio, and then they had radio shows that were very similar to what we now know as the sitcom and TV. They were all done through sound effects, and it was great theater. We call it the theater of the mind, which is radio. It was local, but one of the problems we have is you can see the fragmentation. When I was selling Cat Country, it was the #1 station for about 20 quarters in the early 90s. And we averaged about an 18 to 19 share of all listeners from 6 a.m. to midnight. And you'll notice on this graphic that the top one, SFI, only has a 7.2 share. Radio has lost a tremendous amount of share, and the fragmentation of it, they're getting small audiences. The market for radio, the universe as we call it, is the Wasatch Front, where TV and other forms are the whole state, and even parts of Nevada and Wyoming and southern Idaho. So it's a different universe. This is a share of a smaller number than, say, television, the television universe. You'll notice people love sports radio, and there's really only one. I think it's Call FM. I'm not sure about any of the other ones. RN have a share that aren't put together in this other share.
Sure.
So it's small audience fragmentation, but as we will say, fragmentation also is an opportunity to target real specific, and it allows you to maybe reach a smaller audience, but more of a focused audience.
And I think that's the real takeaway here is that, yeah, radio may not have the reach of some of the others, and may have some other inherent issues because of, you know, streaming and people tuning out, whatever it is, but it's just not true because of the way that you can segment, and any time if you can create a good content piece that people are going to listen to that can break through the noise, you're probably reaching the right audience if you've picked the right segment here. And so in a way, you've actually found people who have a very specific niche. And for those of us in marketing, that's really what we're looking for almost all the time, is where can we actually go that isn't just broad shotgun approach, but actually say these people in some way have raised their hand and said, this is what I'm interested in. And then what is that product? And so for those of you listening, I think you obviously have to weigh in, what is my product and is it a viable channel for me? But I don't think you can just simply write it off without knowing what are all these segments, and is there not one that's absolutely perfect for me?
Right. I feel that that like neighborhoods, we tend to live around people that have similar lifestyles, incomes, and likes, and where we shop in the same neighborhood. It's the same with the radio station you tend to have the same lifestyle, the same type of person, the same age group that listens to these. So, you know, you have to know who your market is, who your target is, and you can choose it from there.
Absolutely. And here's just another slide as far as how cars are actually connecting some of these streaming platforms. Right. And so I think it's just very hard to really understand or grasp something. When somebody says radio, we jump to conclusions. But right. Did we define it correctly? Because they're streaming radio, and that's a whole different audience. And there's a very robust audience on streaming. Likewise, there's a very robust and qualified audience on just your you know, normal radio stations. And so, you know, when you say radio, do you bundle every little thing, or are you actually confident that you can say, I know the different types of radio and know why I either have picked them or have not picked them for myself? And so don't let it bundle.
Yeah. And there is two kinds. There's passive and active listening when it comes to radio. Your talk and programming that features specific DJs and the way they do things and specific personalities tend to be more active, and you tend to pay attention more to the advertising, where some radio stations, even ones that are highly rated, are more passive. They're in the background. And are you really, you know, how much you're paying attention? So you have to consider that when in your choices too for radio.
But I think one other thing there is simply that there's so many different types of ad models. So, and I know you're going to talk about this a little bit later, but, you know, when we say radio, do you think, oh, I never listen to radio commercials? But have you ever listened to a daytime show or a morning show and they're doing a huge promo for a local company? I mean, these radio stations are going out to your location and they're drawing people in. And so from a local perspective, they can have very big impact. And then when you have a radio personality who has a reach, tweeting or sending some type of a social thing, letting them know that they're going to be somewhere, they're just increasing your reach that much more. And it's not just an ad all the time or like this radio ad. There's so many more things you can really do with radio that can be super effective for you.
Look for the added value. Just don't buy commercials. And you'll find that some of these stations can be pretty expensive. Radio was always thought of as a frequency medium because they were so much less expensive than broadcast television. And so when I was selling radio, I would sell 10 to 15 spots a day, where in TV, you were lucky to buy on broadcast, you know, 4 to 5 a week. Mm-hmm. And that was a hard adjustment for me to make. But it is considered a frequency medium, albeit a smaller audience, but ask for the added value, how you can increase your visibility and rather than just buying spots.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think there's a lot of them out there. Radio competition's kind of all over. I think I want to move on to the next channel. Okay. And so let's just briefly talk about outdoor. And in most cases, outdoor is considered billboard, but you are now seeing more, you know, vinyl signs on buildings, digital billboards. There's a lot of different things. The old billboard that was just a standalone on the side of the road is kind of adapted a little bit. But in addition to, you know, bus boards and just other, you know, right, outdoor signage that you're seeing. And so I think outdoor signage is really fantastic, and I've seen some really good ones locally. I'll give a shout out quickly to the Crushers out in southern Utah and the excavating team, but they just put really big letters on the side of the hill where they were stationed, and I mean, now I know what it is. And literally, I've just driven by it so much, and then the other day I drove by their actual office here locally, and I had that brand recognition. And so I have no use for them as of right now, but should I be somebody that were in that industry, I have complete name recognition, and that was done through an outdoor sign that I've just continually gone past. And so in general, billboards are kind of this frequency. You drive past them so much, that brand really starts to settle with you. And you don't always get the targeted, you know, every person passing the billboard is not going to buy it, but it does reach large audiences. at least, in a kind of a localized sense. And it's very visible still. Most people are saying it's not, but it's really incredible as soon as there's a bad billboard up, the social reaction to that. And I won't mention names, but recently there was an automotive company that kind of had this happen, and everybody was getting all over them for this. And in the back of my mind, I was like, and yet billboards don't work. And and I'm like, even if that was a negative thing, they always say, any good press is good press, press is good press, I guess. But just the fact that so many people talked about it, shared it. If I were a brand, I don't want to be in the negative light necessarily, but if I could flip that, what would be the ROI and ability for me to really make an impact? So I think billboard is still yet again a viable option.
Well, I love them and I hate them. They really ran into a roadblock with the unrelenting regulations, the limited growth. Each town, each municipality had different regulations, and there was a high cost of changing the ad. It was tough to, and you saw billboards that stayed up forever and ever, even after their contracts were over because they didn't have anybody to sell that. But digital billboards have made a big impact. You do have to be careful. Your message is only up there for a very short period of time, and you're sharing it with sometimes 8 different people, but it's easy to change. The biggest thing with billboards, I think, is that a great billboard is, I think, one of the most powerful forms of advertising. And you should never have more than, 4 words on a billboard. These billboards that have all these pictures and all these names and all these different messages are totally terrible billboards. I will say that. I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but and I love billboards that are close to where your locations are and say, take this exit. Tell them what to do or why they should go there, but keep it simple.
Absolutely. Well, just the real-time effect that digital billboards are having, whether it's a weather-related product that you have, or it's a near exit, but you can change that if you have daily specials. I've noticed some of the not restaurants, but grocery stores are starting to say what their fresh produce is, or something that they've just got in that's kind of unique to try to draw you in that way. And so it can actually be quickly adapted and super effective for more of the local audience, and that's what some of these first traditional channels will be. Not the huge, broad national reach, but you're still going to get a good impact, and depending on your business type, it could be a very viable option.
And I think it is a brand builder if you use it with all the other forms of advertising you're doing. It just reinforces it.
Absolutely. Well, and so let's get into more of your expertise, and let's talk a little bit about television.
Well, television, it's not what it used to be. At Comcast, we went to a new way of thinking about television. It's a multi-screen. It's everywhere, from your mobile to your tablet to your PC to your laptop. So, but how does it work? Your local broadcast station only has one revenue stream, and that's paid advertising, and that's a problem for them to be able to grow and to be able to make the kind of money that television stations have been in the past. Cable or subscription television with satellite has 2 revenue streams: subscription fees and paid advertising. The subscription fees are a steady cash flow that comes to those companies every month, allowing them to buy content. But most of the money they spend every month is to pay people like ESPN millions and millions and millions of dollars every month. It's very expensive. So the paid advertising helps. Now, how do people watch television? Well, there's the antenna, hardwired cable, that comes into your house, satellite, and now internet streaming through that hardwired cable through your internet provider. It used to be only the 3. and now internet streaming. So why do people watch video? Well, it's content. It's high quality. It's the HBOs winning all the television awards, and cable has won more Emmy awards in the last 5 years than the broadcast stations. It's not even close. Because it's never been more product has never been more prolific. Being able to, if you were a producer of quality television or movies, this is the golden age, because there are so many people looking for content. We want more and more. Premium channels like HBO, Starz, Showtime started this. Viewers were willing to pay extra for high quality and winning programming, and then higher internet speeds allowed for standalone video on demand, like your Netflix, your Hulu's, your Amazon Prime. If you remember, Netflix was a home delivery of DVDs, and that's how they started. And look at them now. I don't believe I bought a music CD or a DVD in the last 2 or 3 years because of streaming services.
I think I know people who never have.
Yeah.
I think this bottom stat, though, is just quite fascinating. If you tell us why you think maybe the online and web-based shopping sites are such large advertisers.
Well, the research has shown that for every dollar they spend, they can track visits to their website. When they spend weeks they spend less money, they have less visitors to their website. You know, you can build a beautiful website, a shopping website, whatever, but if people don't know, you know, that you're there, and even though, you'll see a YouTube video that goes viral that has 5 million views. On television, nationally, 5 million viewers of a television show would be one that maybe is on borderline canceling.
I think this is an important statement, because people do see the 5 million and get really excited, and I don't know that they are comparing it accurately to TV. So go into that a little bit.
Well, that's one of the big problems of measurement, talking about views versus average viewership. When I say a program has 5 million views, 5 million average viewers during an hour programming, that means anytime during that hour, there were 5 million people available to see your commercial. That's different than 5 million different people having watched your video over a series of time, one at a time.
Right.
And so they have realized that if they want to drive traffic to their website, TV is still the #1 way to do it. 92% of the population watch TV at least for 15 minutes a week, and that's much higher than any other form of video watching.
And define some of the difference between those two, because there are 2 different types of television. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, local broadcast television in Utah has ruled for years and years. It was one of the highest quality news products and overall products in the United States. I remember going to places like San Francisco or Seattle and not seeing nearly the quality of TV production that we saw here in Salt Lake. KSL drove that. At one time, they had unlimited budgets, and everyone else had to keep up.
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll say it, President Hinckley decided that KSL needed to start making money and be a regular business. And so that's changed a little bit, and the competition has tightened. But as you can see, this is an interesting graphic here. Broadcast television, it's all or nothing. You reach the whole market from Rock Springs, like I said, to Elko, to St. George, and southern Idaho. But since 2005, the ratings of the late local news, and that's the 4 major ones, KSDU, KUTV, KTBX, and KSL, have dropped almost 74% in rating since 2005. So in 11 years, the adults 18 to 49 over 200,000 are no longer watching local late news. And 94% of all adults 18 to 49 in Utah are not watching any late local news. So what are they watching? We know that at 9 to 10 o'clock hours, people are watching more TV during those hours every day than any other hours. So we believe they're watching cable channels, they're streaming video, and they're watching TV in a different way. Mm-hmm. So local broadcast television has a struggle. You'll see more and more local programming, like you've seen the early news, what we call the 5 or 6 o'clock hour. Now you'll see KSL, some of these run 4 and 5 half-an-hour newscasts in a row. The reason is because they own all the inventory in local programming. In other words, they can play as many commercials as they want in those programs, and they're also using the resources they have much more. Like, for instance, the anchors at the 10 o'clock news, it used to be you only saw them on the 10 o'clock news. Now you're seeing them all the time, and they're using these people. They're working a lot harder. Yeah. It's a lot tougher, and then you're seeing these Good Things Utah, all this local, and then the reason is because it's cheaper for them to produce. They already have the manpower, and they own all the commercial inventory in that program.
Sure. And, just to say quickly, one, I guess, positive for the local broadcast television stations are some of these daytime shows with the audience right. that they have if you have that product. I mean, selling to stay-at-home moms and, kids' products. There's a number of different things, household goods, what are you going to cook tonight? All of these things, actually, you can have a major impact by participating in some of these. And those are, again, back to what you were saying with the value adds. Right. When you buy the spots, you can often get appearances on these shows. There's many different ways to value add the local stations that can be really, really positive should you have that type of a brand.
I sold Good Things Utah on KTBX, and it was the first one that was started that, and it was very effective for new products, new services, new events coming up. People were clamoring to get on there, and it was very, very effective. So yes, there are great ways, and it does reach the whole market. It's just getting more expensive because the ratings are less, and that's one problem. It still is very expensive. Late news is about $1,000 to $1,200 per 30-second commercial. Mm-hmm. Real quick, I'll just say this, that there are a lot of commercials in the late local news, and if you look at the third quarter hour, the blue one, 37.6, of all television commercials bought in the late local news play in the last 8 minutes, and as many as 7 of those minutes are commercials. And they all, the advertiser pays the same price, whether they're in the first quarter hour, second quarter hour, or in that last 8 minutes.
And so for our listeners, Steve, should they be requesting first quarter, second quarter, third quarter?
Yeah.
What's the secret here?
Yeah, they may need to or pay more money. The one thing about late news, it does have still a decent audience, and you can reach quite a few people. But I would limit it to no more than 1 or 2 a week, because after that, you're reaching the same people, and it's a very expensive way to build frequency. I would never buy more than 1 or 2 late news, and use that extra ones that you've been buying to buy other products to expand your reach.
Sure. And let's switch quickly to the other side. So local television, and then the flip side is, I guess, cable.
Right. As a research director at Channel 4 and Channel 30, I put out an anti-cable piece every week, and it was pretty easy. It's no secret that cable, only less than 50% of the homes in Utah have a cable, hardwired cable into their house. There's more now because of the internet. It's interesting, but I would just, tell my salespeople, why would you want to buy a commercial on cable when more than half of the people you're trying to reach could never see your commercial? It was impossible. Well, one of the things that we did not tell them was that none of the local broadcast stations had any higher percentage of, let's say, Davis County. You are a Davis County business person. Only 10% of their audience lives in Davis County. Only 8% of their audience lives in Weber County. So if, unless you want to reach the whole state, local broadcast is a wasteful way to use TV. Cord cutting has slowed. The recession had more to do with it than any other single factor. And millennials are about 80% of people who are have cord cutting. They're under 34 years of age. And fragmentation is really not a bad word. Like I said, I think it's a code word for specific targeting of age groups and lifestyles. Cable has large free video on demand libraries. More and more they have, I know Comcast and Dish and Direct have more titles than Netflix has right now. Some of them are free, some of them are low-cost streaming that you can stream directly from them. And cable providers have partnered with the cable networks to provide free live streaming with apps such as Watch ESPN. I had a client that I put their commercial in our streaming video product, and their commercial played in the BYU game last Saturday on Watch ESPN. Someone was watching the game on their tablet or on their mobile, and they saw this commercial.
I'm sure that didn't upset them.
No, that didn't, and it is right now. I can't sell that specifically, but it was part of a deal where we're also playing that commercial on the local A&E app, Animal Planet, HGTV, and it is zonable, which we'll get into next. We're the sales arm. Comcast Spotlight is who I work for, and 94% of the cable subscribers, and we also sell DirecTV and Dish customers. Starting in January, DirecTV will be included in all our cable buys on a statewide basis.
And to slow down there, because I think that's an important distinction, is in the past, media buyers like an advertising agency like ours would be going to multiple different vendors to try to get 100% of the basically television provider viewership. And so now you guys are allowing us to come to one location and be able to reach across to basically provide our same content, our same ad, but we actually, instead of just knowing that it's only Comcast, you're reaching everybody that has a television set.
A subscription, yeah, television. And DirecTV and Dish customers combined are a little bit less than what we have in cable. So we nearly double the number of households we can reach by now providing, selling DirecTV and Dish. We were selling DirecTV and Dish separately from our cable, statewide cable interconnect. Starting in January, we will be including DirecTV with that. You won't be able to buy it separately. And Dish will come along once they see how much money DirecTV is making as part of this. The one big difference is, even though I can cover the whole state, we also split our Comcast, not Dish and Direct yet, but Comcast customers into 19 different retail zones. That means that you can buy your local market, your local retail market. We believe, and it's shown, that most people shop 3 to 5 miles from their location. It's convenience. And so I can sell an advertiser just our Davis zone, which is basically Davis County, the Weber zone, which is basically Weber County, Cache Valley. In fact, I think And then we can insert commercials in 49 different networks, so I can reach kids with comedy, with cartoons, with Toon Network. I can reach young men watching Adult Swim late at night. I can reach older folks watching Fox News and some of those things. So and they're 24/7. You get sports 24/7 on ESPN. You get home and garden television 24/7 on it. So it's a consistent audience. This is a map of our different zones. As you can see, Salt Lake has 4 different zones. I have the second largest Chevrolet dealer in the state is located in West Valley, and doing an analysis through polk information, which we buy, that tells us where every car that an auto dealer sells and where it's registered in one of our zones, not county but by zone. And 76 of his, all of his registrations are sold in 2 of the 4 Salt Lake zones. So he is saving money by targeting and owning his backyard. We work with Ed Canley together through this last July statistics. 90% of all Ed Canley's registrations fall within our Weber zone and our Davis zone, and they concentrate in Davis in both zones, but they are the #1 Ford dealer in the Davis zone. And there are television commercials and video commercials all fall within those zones.
Sure.
Targeting.
And that's, you know, what they say television can't do, you know, cable or, you know, just in general, these things can't do it. I think we were going to speak briefly to video streaming, just to keep us on time. I want to get into some of the common misnomers of traditional marketing. So we're going to go through this. If anybody wants information on it, though, real quickly, I think just to show the devices, maybe.
All the screens, the Rokus, the Apple TVs, the Game Boys, my VCR, my TV.
And that's one of the big parts of why we wanted to have this webinar specifically is, as I was talking about radio, the same thing with television. I think we just have this misconception that when you say TV, you think you're sitting on a couch looking at a TV, and that's not accurate. And it's not accurate that you have to be in a car to listen to radio. And so when we say, oh, I don't want to do that because my people aren't in a car, you might not be fully understanding the channel itself and how it might help your business. So that was one of the big purposes of our webinar today. It's obviously really huge. I don't know if there's a couple we want to just steal out of that.
You know, there's lots of streaming video sites now. There's, there's the user-generated, and there's the production company type, like original content on Netflix and Hulu, and then you have user-generated content like YouTube, and they also do have non-user-generated things on there. One of the big things with video streaming now is can you skip the commercial? We sell pre-roll and mid-roll, and everything that we do, the sites that we use are unskippable. Mm-hmm. We kind of stopped our affiliation with YouTube because they had the skippable after 5 seconds, and so that's sure. That's become a big product with me, and sometimes I have to struggle whether to put them on TV or do the streaming video because I know it's going to play, I know I can target it, and I can get very specific in some areas like people going on vacation looking for a cruise, or I can also advertise to people who have Ford vehicles, own Ford vehicles, right. Or Hondas, only them. So it's getting very targetable.
And that's where everybody thinks digital does so well, but where television is really kind of catching up and being able to provide some of these similar
well, video is king. Having a high-definition video, being able to show your product, sight, sound, emotion, clarity, it's really the content, and that's what's driving everything. Good content is always watched.
And I actually, yeah, I mean, it's segmentation, it's great creative, And we actually just did another webinar and a presentation about how important video is. And so for those of you out there listening, I think that if you don't currently have a video, that's something you really want to start looking into. If you could, whether you're going to share it digitally, if you're going to put it on television, whatever it's going to be, just having a video asset and having multiple of them is a really great way to, maybe start moving your content.
And it's not that expensive.
No.
TV in Davis County, my average, I just looked at the schedule I put together for Ed Kenley for this month, and not including their Monday Night Football sponsorship, their average commercial rate was under $5 per spot.
Wow. I don't think people think those numbers at all when you start talking these things. Hey, let's talk briefly just kind of some of the things that we hear all the time about traditional marketing and the misconceptions, mistakes that we think people are making. First off, to your point just a moment ago, obviously cost. We talk about any of these things, people just immediately say, oh no, it's just way too expensive. What's maybe common rebuttal that you have for that, Steve?
It's not if you can target geographically and only reach and not waste money reaching people who aren't your customers. You won't reach everyone, but everyone you reach is a potential customer. So every dollar spent, and when you limit it geographically, obviously you're paying less.
Right.
So radio can do that, except for Pandora can do that and different things. So being able to geographically target and in some ways lifestyle target is making the cost more effective and your return on investment greater because you have less waste.
Sure. And this picture is just showing a Super Bowl ad at about $5 million for 30 seconds. I mean, that's, a huge number if you think about it. But then they actually dial some of these things back and figure out what was the reach, what was the impact, and what was the ROI. And these people continue to come back. And one of the things that they're really coming back for is that brand, not necessarily recognition, but how you can position your brand as a quality leader. And a lot of people are talking about the fact that you're able to do this gives people understanding that whatever your product it is, it's good enough to be able to play with the big dogs. And that alone gives inherent trust. And so when maybe they see some of the more digital aspects that might be at the bottom of the funnel, you're able to still say, oh, I don't have to overcome, is this thing worthwhile? Am I going to get screwed over? And there's so much fraud and other things going on with online sales and things of that nature that to see this gives you credibility. And that's something that inherently people aren't considering and is a huge value that these mediums have.
Well, online is so new that they're discovering they really don't have a set regulatory way of and measuring it. Yeah, Google's made to make Google look good.
Yeah.
But getting back, commercials aren't as expensive as you think they are to produce. And with the advent of HD cameras and Steadicams, one of the people I work with, producer, has a Steadicam that he holds in his hand and it has a little swivel on it, and it can't weigh more than less than a pound, and it's a Steadicam where they used to have to wear these big suits and everything. It is amazing the technology that's coming out, so that you can do shots with drones. You can do it. It is amazing. Video is driving ad sales. It is every article that we read is that video is the most effective form of
and the most impactful thing for Facebook to actually become positive. I mean, these guys have owned the digital space and couldn't figure it out, and they actually took a page out of the video book of let's do this, and they're making huge investments in it. They're making full-length motion picture films with iPhones. So for those of you out there like, I got to go buy a $3,000 camera, that's not necessary. It's easy to make a spot, and I think it's actually fairly cost effective to then traffic that spot through some of these channels. let's jump into the next one, which is just everybody's going off the grid, and so we're not even reaching them anymore. I don't agree with that either. I mean, a lot of what we were showing, and one of the traditional pieces we didn't go into very deep here was direct mail. But direct mail specifically has had a upsurge in the last little while, and so, and the reason for that is people are actually seeing the void in it. When there was just this exodus that direct mail didn't work, it was too expensive, and so everybody stopped sending direct mail. Well, what did that cause? That actually caused a void that people were no longer getting mail, and so now they're excited to get a good piece of mail. And it actually has kind of worked in the direct mail favor, and actually spend was up in 2015 for direct mail, probably an effect of postage being up as well. But the fact is, there are really great examples, and we're doing this through account-based marketing that we actually send, and we just keep coming back to it, but it's quality of content. However creative you can be, all these channels are just one more touch point for you to get in front of them, and if you do something really well that's clever, it's going to be effective. And so direct mail is one of them that is, no longer effective, but is working. And I know that's not totally the grid itself, and maybe Steve, you can speak to the cord cutting aspect of it.
Well, the recession had a lot to do with it, but millennials, are going off the grid. I have a son that's just under 40. He pays a lot of money for a high-speed internet, but does not have any cable. Mm-hmm. But he has 2 or 3 other subscription devices, which he does pay subscription prices. Mm-hmm. And just recently, he decided he was needed to upgrade his, Comcast was going to take away his promotional, the low price to get you to buy. And so after talking to them, he got higher speeds, and they threw in some cable channels as part of his deal. And so now he does have some Comcast cable. So you're going to see bundling. People who buy Netflix and Hulu, most of them still have some sort of subscription TV, whether satellite or cable. They're adding to the content because they want more content. There's a few who are going off the grid, and it's 80% of those going off the grid are a very small part of the cord cutting. Yeah, the cord cutting group. Sure. And the same with the DVR and that.
Well, and even through what you were talking about, is they're still reachable.
Yes.
You're showing that through your sources, you're still reaching them in app and in other things. And so going off the grid doesn't mean people aren't seeing it. And there's proof in that in so many different brands and their commercials that it's obviously still working. The next is just online streaming DVR skippability. Steve spoke to this briefly on how they kind of got away from YouTube because of some of the skippability. But one of the things I've found, and this isn't necessarily completely related to skippability, but ad blocker. Right. So ad blocker is now actually going to sell you ads. I mean, how messed up is that? Like, they literally are making it block. But now, if we pay ad blocker rather than the old channels we were getting it through, we can then get those ads put back on. And so skippability, things of that nature, they're all very interesting, but and they all have an impact. There's no doubt about that. But in the end, I think you have a stat about people who are doing DVR who aren't actually fast-forwarding commercials.
Right. A study was done about 8 years ago that scared the heck out of the broadcasters. Nielsen was convinced to measure commercial viewing rather than the content viewing. And after it came out, it showed that the programs that were heavily DVR'd, people actually increased the watching of the commercial, because there are people who forget that it's a recorded program, and those that do say that all I watch is recorded programming, they're about 20% of the population, and they do 80% of the recording. Most people don't. On a daily basis, the highest time that people are DVRing in Utah, and it's about 50% have the ability to DVR in Utah, which is a little higher than the national average. But at 9 o'clock at night is when most people are watching a DVR program. At that time, still 76% of all viewing at that time is still live. That only accounts for about 24% at its greatest. And that is being done by, like I say, a very small group of heavy users.
Well, I think the biggest thing I just heard right there is that only even 50% of people have the ability to do it. And so it's this big, huge scare, but most people aren't paying to be able to do it. I don't know.
Doesn't everybody, you've always been able to skip commercials,
right?
You know, and if, you know, push a button on a radio, before the electronic television, you know, I was the channel changer for my dad. You know, you could always change and skip commercials.
Yeah.
But they're still effective. As you mentioned, these companies spend millions and millions of dollars of research, and they have, you know, the ROI, and they can see it happening. And you don't have to be a multi-million-dollar advertiser to get the same results. It's all based on scalability.
Absolutely. And I guess I want to preface, we are saying just the merits of traditional in a world where they seem to be going backwards. But that doesn't mean we're obviously against. I mean, I'm the digital marketing director, and so I don't even do traditional buying for my agency. But the fact is they go so hand in hand, and it's really about an omni-channel and a multi-channel approach. And the fact that these are channels you should be considering and not just writing off like so many people, they kind of scoff at it. And it's like, wait a sec, have you really thought about it? And so one of the reasons they do scoff so much at it is that digital has come in and it's so trackable. You're going to get that click. You're going to find out if they hit the checkout page. You can do it from you know, start to finish. But the fact is you can almost do it with traditional, and with the advent of new technologies, it's getting that much better. The really big thing is just the mobile. I mean, this thing is shooting so much information to so many people, you have no idea that when there's now billboard providers who are using your mobile phone, so when they know that you passed the billboard, and so they're now doing the stats of the type of people that passed, not based on the old Polk stuff, but that was based on just the area and the demographics of that area, but now of the actual car drivers. So, you know, maybe you have an area that most people are driving back, but they're coming from 20 minutes away. And so it's not just the neighborhood that the billboard exists in, it's what is the commute of people. And your cell phone is sending that data to the point that they can actually measure that ROI. Another really neat thing that is occurring is just the ability to like geofence and geoconvert, where if you see an ad, if I can determine that you saw a television ad and then doing cross-device stuff, I can actually see that then your cell phone walked into that store. That's a conversion. And so this is actually improving exponentially, and it's no longer something that's not trackable in any way.
Well, we're going to start putting cookies in our videos so that we'll be able to tell that if someone watches a video and doesn't immediately click through to the website, that in your analytics you'll be able to see that people who did click into your website were exposed to that ad at some point in the last 4 weeks. And we can get so specific. I can get people who are intending to attend a technical school, or they're looking to buy an RV, or they're looking to buy a Ford pickup truck or an Audi. I can target very specifically with my online video to certain age groups, and only they will be served that video. So it's getting to the point, and TV in the next 5 or 6 years will be that addressable. That you could have two people living in the same block, both Comcast customers, and if they're a different age group, one's under 35, the other's over 35, they could be served two different commercials during the same programming. That is coming. They're experimenting on a national basis right now.
That's fantastic. And I think we've talked about this one quite a bit, so I don't know if we need to go too deep into it, but the fact is it is targetable now, and you just made the story that we're getting to the point they can target people across the street from one another with separate ads, and it'll only continue to improve. People aren't going to go away from their televisions. It's just what are you going to be capable of serving onto that TV? And,
screen. It's a screen. Yeah, it's a screen.
That's a really good point. And so, yeah, it's targetable, and it is a misnomer. So, you know, kind of come to the end of our webinar here, and just a few takeaways, and you can see them listed here. But for me, the real thing really comes back to that technology is advancing, and that technology is not necessarily killing these traditional media channels, but actually enhancing them. And they will continue to be an important part of your multi-channel marketing strategy. Additionally, and I think we really touched on this one, but just make it clever, make good creative, make good content.
You know, like location, location, location. It's content, content, content.
Yeah.
People, you know, they'll only watch the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And they have a choice to get rid of it.
Right. There's so many choices now.
Yeah. So start with the creative. And the fact that people are still engaged on these different platforms with different screens, and just basically the fact that a lot of what you've heard and what you say isn't completely accurate, so don't believe everything you say, and maybe challenge your own misconceptions. When you know, maybe you saw this webinar and you were thinking, oh, I just have no interest in it, make sure that, like the radio, you understand all the different offerings that you may or may not be including in your own strategy.
There's always something in your marketing strategy, one thing that's not working as well as other things. So that's where you take that money and you try something new.
Right.
You look for something that may you know, a need or a solve a problem better than that you know, so
yeah.
Take a good look at it. What is working and what's not working so well, and upgrade it.
Absolutely. And you come back to that on the ROI thing. Steve talked about Wayfair and all these online retailers that can turn it off and notice the impact. And so there's always ways. So anyway, I think we have a few quick questions that we can go through, and we'll just jump into that momentarily. Give us 1 second. Okay, so our first question, Steve, is going to be, what is the most cost-effective way to use traditional marketing? That's a tough question. I don't know if I have an answer for that myself.
They all work well, but you have to use them right, and still more money by far is spent on television advertising. Of course, that's what I sell. I'm biased, obviously, but that's where you have to really sit down and take the time to look at who your audience is, how best to reach it, what do you really want to say. You have to take the time to market. The biggest problem I have when I meet a new client is that they just don't spend the time to market. They're so busy with their inventory or with their personnel or with you know, all the day-to-day things that the one thing that they neglect is marketing, which is the way you grow your business. And that's really the most important part of your business, is to grow it. So that's a tough answer, but I need more information.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, what is the most cost-efficient way to do anything? Like, how do you answer that question? What you do is you do the research, right, and you take the time to understand your options, and you take the time to understand who you are, because I often think that we have so many assumptions of where our customers are, and we don't try it, we don't test it, we don't really ask, and we miss out. I mean, I talk to people all the time and ask them how many of them are actually advertising on a forum that is specific for their product, and they don't even know those forums exist. And yet there are people who are highly engaged doing user-generated content, but they've never heard of it and they don't try it, and yet their audience is sitting right there. And I would argue the same thing with a niche television station, a niche radio, you know, any of these different things. There's a niche for it. So take the time to research and find out, and that's where your money will be best spent. Next question, and I think we've pretty much addressed this throughout the entire thing, but are all traditional channels still effective?
No. I mean, some are better than others. It's like all marketing. You have to choose the ones that are going to give you the biggest bang for your money. I spend a lot of time in research, and that's one thing Comcast, as a big company, gives us a tremendous amount of research on lifestyles and you know, what people with certain incomes, what channels do they watch, certain education, what channels do they want, how long they've lived in their home, what channels networks do they watch. And so the more specific I can get with a client of what their ideal customer looks like and the one that will give them the most return for their money looks like, then I can determine which channels. I rely on the auto. I try to mirror the same cable channels that Ford and Chevy and Honda buy on a national basis.
Sure.
Because they've done the research.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'll tell you what, sports programming seems to be the one that gives the most bang for the buck. It's more expensive, but it delivers larger audiences and loyal people. And one thing about TV I forgot to mention is that when you're on TV, it tends to give you a degree of extra credibility. Wow, they're on TV. Mm-hmm. I know that's when I went from radio to TV. I saw that immediately. That you know, it gave the customer an air of I don't know, more credibility. Yeah, being on TV.
I think it absolutely has that effect on it. I'm going to go ahead and say yes, actually. I think that every one of them does work, and I'll come back to being creative. Yeah. Direct mail doesn't work. I promise you, I could probably come up with something that most people would buy, and we have case studies at Fluid that we've done it. And so I think that it's more how do you present the things you have on the medium that it is, and it's people not thinking outside the box and just sending another ad, but you don't actually have to do that. There's many different ways to advertise things on the specific traditional media channels that people aren't really thinking of, and they kind of get stuck in, okay, I'm going to do a radio spot. And it's like there's so many other options. Let's go to the next one, though. How broad of an audience should I aim for? That's another kind of relative question, I would say. I don't know what your thoughts, Steve?
Well, there's two schools of thought. Reach and frequency. The greater amount of people you reach, the broader you reach, then you might find somebody who needs your product immediately. One thing about advertising is most of the money you're spending is reaching advertisers that are not going to buy your product today. They're future customers. Mm-hmm. The majority of it is for future customers. If I knew everybody when their refrigerator was going to break, I'd be a genius, you know, or when everybody needed tires. And no matter how many times you see a tire ad, if you have new tires on your car, you're not going to go out and buy new tires, no matter what the. Right. But frequency is important. But I think if you know your customer, it's better to target your customer and try to own that group rather than try to conquer and convince people to your product or service. Own what you do and own what you do best.
And that's what I tell my team as well. I'd rather serve one ad to somebody in market looking for my product than 1,000 ads to 1,000 people who have no interest in me. And so I'm looking for that person who's in market, and I want to find a way to reach them. And that comes back to this fragmentation of the channels and all these things. They're there. You know, look at HDTV is just gold mine for selling home products and different things like that. I mean, you know where your audience is, go to it, find those niche sites that really can help you, and that's where I would start. And then if I had more budget, I'd probably get more broad. And I think this is a good question to end on, but the last question is, what is the future of traditional?
It's multi-screen. It's not TV anymore. It's screens. I'm selling screens, but it's still video. It's still people watch video. They don't static. I think is not as effective. I think the clutter that you get with pop-ups and stuff with the new media online. But it's going to be video. You need to take the time to create something that really gets your message across, and it's going to move the needle, and then you figure out the best way to get that in front of people. I've seen people who just do videos, put them on their website, and hope people find them.
Yeah.
And you know,
all too often.
Yeah, they spend $5,000 on a video, and then they have 600 views on that video in a year. Where I can sell them one commercial for $25, play that commercial on it, and reach 1,000 people in one commercial. So the future is video. The future is video. HD video across all screens.
Yep. You know, I'm actually going to agree with that. I think that we're about to do our next webinar is actually going to be on SoloMo, which is social, local, mobile, and I think you're going to see video affect that just as much, but I think that is another concept that you're really going to be seeing, and traditional plays a huge part in that, and just people localizing in general, whereas we did get a lot more broad. You know, things that I pitch all the time are marketing automation and segmented email, things of that nature. And so we are going away from this shotgun approach, and marketers are getting sophisticated enough, and the technology is now there that we can target individuals rather than mass audiences. And so I think you're going to see things localized, and I think video as a content piece will be the leader in that. Well, Steve, I want to say thank you very much for coming to share in your incredible wisdom with us today. I think that those out there probably have a very good understanding of traditional at this point and when and how to use it. And so thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. This was a pleasure. I love talking to people, but what I love more is asking questions. And that's how I find out if my product can help them.
Sure.
You know, and I can only do that by not talking, but by listening.
Absolutely. A wise man. And just to segue into that, for us to be listening to you, you can always reach us at the hashtag Fluid Webinar Series. There's the two @ symbols there, but again, Steve, why don't you give them your email one more time?
It is Steven with a V, STEVEN _ Fowles, FOWLES @cable.comcast.com, and you can reach me on my mobile phone, 801-201-4182.
And you can always reach Steve by contacting Fluid as well. We work very closely together to try to understand these things and make sure that we give our clients the best possible results. But until next time, guys.